We gotta do what we gotta do to get by in this world, and working the night shift is a necessity for a lot of us. It pays better, but unfortunately it's higher risk, and when we're all alone at night, we become sitting ducks, targets for whatever sinister intentions an unknown predator has planned. Tonight's true stories come from those who experienced just that. I used to work night shift security in a neighbourhood near a university. We often encountered some weird stuff, but mostly we just dealt with drunk college kids and the like. One night, it's nearly 4 AM, so we're ending our shift and we're heading in when this old homeless looking man stops me and asks me to call an ambulance for him. I ask him what's wrong, and he's telling me that he's having heart palpitations and suicidal ideation. I flag down a co-worker who informs our boss and calls for the ambulance. I sit down next to the guy as he's laying on the sidewalk and let him talk to me. At first he's saying what you'd expect from someone who wants to commit suicide, then it gets dark as hell. He starts telling me about a woman he stabbed because he asked her for $20, but she only gave him a few bucks, so he murdered her. Okay, pretty creepy, but then it gets worse. He just starts going on about how he's raped people and committed arson and other horrifying stuff, and I'm sitting almost alone with him while my co-worker is several buildings down on the phone with dispatch. He starts telling me about how his mother used to have sex with her father and brother, and that he saw that, and about how he's a crackhead too. When the ambulance arrived, he started cussing and yelling, but at least I was free to go at that point. I understand it was probably at least partially the ramblings of a mentally ill crackhead, but it was still unnerving. It's not every day a stranger confesses to you about murder and rape he's committed. Also, I'm a young woman, so I would occasionally get the super fucking creepy guys who would try to corner me in dark roads and follow me around. I used to work evenings at a movie theatre until late in the night. Usually I would get off at about 11, but some late night movies wouldn't end till 1 or 2 in the morning, so there were always cars in the parking lot, but a part of it would be open and illuminated by several streetlights, so it's easy to see someone standing in that area. One night I got off work and was sitting on the steps to the theatre, looking in the empty parking lot waiting for a relative to pick me up. We were texting back and forth, and he told me to meet him at a nearby restaurant as it'd be easier to leave its driveway than the movie theatre. I got up and began walking. Part of the way over to the edge of the parking lot, I heard like some sort of ruffling or scraping noise. It just sounded simply like a shoe scraping along some gravel. I think it's just someone getting out of their car, but I never saw anyone pull up, and I'd been out there for some time. I turned around to see if I could help the person getting out, considering I was still in uniform. I figured it could be someone asking me to tell them the time of a movie ending and how much longer they needed. I spun around, and that's when my stomach sank. It was a dude crouched among a row of cars. As soon as I turned around, he started quickly walking towards me, all hunkered down. I've never sprinted so fast in my life. I didn't recognize them or know what their intentions were, and I wasn't taking any chances. I was working for a grocery chain that's very large in Florida, decorating the cakes. And this one happened to be in a very nice area that had a lot of homeless people because it was just on the outskirts of downtown. This particular location had very limited parking, and employees were encouraged to park across the street or park behind the building which backs up to a small road. It's very well lit across the street and very well lit through our customer parking lot. But due to the amount of trees, the parking lot at the back was very dark. I parked on the backside because it was closer. This particular morning, I exited my vehicle like normal and proceeded to check my phone. As I was walking towards the poorly lit corner of the building, I heard a car door open and then shouting.
What the fuck are you doing?
I turned around and see my produce manager screaming at some man. Apparently, when I parked my car there was some man waiting for me in the bushes about 35 feet away from where I had parked, and when I got out, he stealthily moved towards me, ready to attack. My produce manager had been sitting in his car when he saw the man sneaking behind me and then got out and yelled at them. Thankfully he scared them off. He called the cops, but the man was long gone by the time they arrived. This begins in 2011. I had just turned 24, and with my cosmetology license, I began working at a hair salon down the street from my apartment. I lived in a very wealthy suburban neighbourhood on the water. I called it the Sleepy Beach town. Most nights I worked the front desk, closing with my co-worker Becky. Becky was a shy and reserved younger girl who would easily get embarrassed talking to customers. I, on the other hand, was very extroverted and took pleasure talking with anyone and everyone. The salon was divided 3 ways. There was the room to the left where the stylist cut and coloured hair. The reception's desk was on the right where you first walked in, and behind it, there was a wall between the desk and the back room, reserved for guest waiting, spa treatments and shampooing. I had to approach from the side to get behind the desk. So it started off as a typical night at the salon. There were 2 stylists finishing up on a couple clients in the stylist room, while I was busy training Becky on how to close out the cash register. The clock just turned 6:30 p.m. It was already dark out when a man walked in. He was a tall and a true silver fox with a full head of hair. He wore a black North Face fleece, and he looked like your typical Pacific Northwest local. He asked me if he could take a seat and wait. This isn't the weirdest question in the salon, since many women's husbands come to pick them up and wait until their wife's appointment is finished. I assumed the man was doing the same. 20 minutes passed, and then he walked right up next to Becky and I behind the counter. He looked down at me and says, "I've been waiting, but no one showed up." I politely asked who he's waiting for, and he replied, "You know," then winks.
No, sir, I don't know. How can I help you?
"Are you both over 18, he asks.
Excuse me?
I replied. "I have good money, and I've been patiently waiting. Now I'm getting irritated. I want my massage, and I want it now." Fear had crept over me since he started standing there, especially because his hand was in his pocket and because he was hovering over me in an area with no escape. And then I noticed the handle of a kitchen knife sticking out of his fleece. I signaled to Becky to call 911, but she'd completely frozen. I told the man to come to the front of the counter if he wanted me to begin his appointment. He slowly sauntered to the front of the counter. Then he leans in and softly tells me, "I like that dark shade of lipstick you're wearing. Will you be wearing it for me?" That was when I grabbed the phone and made it very apparent I was calling 911.
He's wearing a black
I quickly
fleece
began
and
giving a
black
full
trousers,
description of him,
and I'm pretty
including
sure
the
he
knife
has
handle
a-
I'd noticed. He turned around and left out the front. I had this weird feeling that he wasn't done yet, so I locked the entry door. A few moments later, he came running up, stopped, and stared into my eyes. His look looked empty and careless with rage as he began punching the front door. He slowly turned and quietly started walking away after that. While this was going on, I told everyone to remain calm and said that this was being handled. Thankfully, the cops showed up immediately and detained him. The officer explained to me that the man had escaped a psychiatric hospital a few towns over. However, the reasoning behind why he had a knife on him was undisclosed. All I know is we were very fortunate for the way the whole thing went down. All things considered. I worked night shifts at a private home care company with a woman named Elizabeth. Elizabeth was a really weird lady and pretty useless as a care provider, since she wouldn't do any heavy lifting, such as rolling a 300-pound bedridden resident over to wash them. I absolutely hated working with her because of that. Most shifts I work with her, it was just the 2 of us since it's nights, and the residents at the department are supposed to be independent. She would follow me around and talk. I didn't really listen to her, which I regret since it would have provided more insight into the person she was. She talked about inbreeding animals quite a bit, which was strange. I wish I had more info on her, but that was my experience working with her. About 2 months later, Elizabeth didn't come into work anymore. Rumour had it that she was fired for stealing narcotics. Fast forward to last year, I was watching the news and Elizabeth's name was all over it. She had been convicted for assaulting residents and killing 8 people since 2007 using insulin, a silent killer if given in large doses and fairly hard to detect if the residents already have other health problems. It first started after she got the job in 2007 at the Crescent Care Facility in Woodstock. While an employee at the Crescent home, she often worked the overnight shift and had sole access to 3 locked medication carts. 2 of her patients were diabetics, which gave her the idea of overdosing them with insulin. The 2 women survived. The first murder victim was James Silcox, 84, and a Second World War veteran who died on August 12, 2007. She was angry at him and felt the urge to kill him, the prosecutor Fraser Kelly said, deciding that it was his time to go. 4 months later, she killed Maurice Granite, an 84-year-old, in December of 2007, telling him she was giving him a vitamin shot. With a failed attempt on 57-year-old Wayne Hedges and 63-year-old Michael Priddle, after deciding that these men were not enjoying their lives anymore, she made sure that she got it right for Gladys Millard, who was 87 years old, Ms. Matheson, who was 95, and Mary Zurowinski, who was 96. She stated in an interview that when someone's dying, it feels like it takes longer when you're around. In July of 2013, she killed 90-year-old Helen Young and afterward hugged and consoled Mrs. Young's niece. "She cried on my shoulder," she recalled on a police interview video. The last victim at Crescent was Maureen Pickering, 78, who was killed in March of 2014, just as Elizabeth was fired. Later that year, working at a nursing home in London, she gave a fatal insulin dose to Mr. Horvath, who was 75, and the following fall tried to unsuccessfully kill Sandra Towler, 77 years old, at their Paris, Ontario branch, the place where we worked night shift together. Her final victim was Beverly Bertram, 68, a diabetic woman who was recovering from surgery at her home in Oxford County. Elizabeth had been hired to provide in-home care, giving Miss Bertram antibiotics. Without access to a nursing home's medication cart, Elizabeth stole insulin by breaking into another patient's house because she didn't want to use up Miss Bertram's own insulin prescription. After Miss Bertram got what she thought was antibiotics, she felt dizzy and unwell and decided to skip on her own dose of insulin. That saved her life. Shortly after, Elizabeth committed herself. She told police that she didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. The night before committing herself, she used her computer to check online articles with titles such as 5 killer nurses who preyed on their helpless patients and When Nurses Kill. She was also looking up the death notices of her victims. If Elizabeth hadn't turned herself in, it's very possible that her victims would have never had their assailant brought to justice. That brings us to the end. If you liked this video, please give it a like and let me know what you thought in the comments below. And to all of you who already comment and always show up to every video, thank you so much. I know all of you by names. I try and get back to pretty much all of you as much as I can. If you got any social medias, you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook or whatever works for you. Connect outside of YouTube. We're all friends here at the end of the day, so you guys support me. It's the least I can do back to you guys, So, thank you so much, guys, for giving me, I don't even know, I think it's, like 540 subscribers. I'm not keeping count. This was last check. At the end of the day, I love making videos for you guys. I just wanted to give some sort of milestone for the people who already follow me and maybe the new people, maybe just to get to know me. So, I'm planning the live stream, and I'll give you some dates, and we'll take it from there. So, I'm going to be part of a live stream with The Strangest. Now that's going to be on the 21st of September at 8 PM Eastern Time, which, if I'm not mistaken, it is New York time. So if you guys were around and wanted to stop by and get to know me as kind of a taste of what the live Q&A might be, and to support The Strangest as well, I'll link them down in the description below. So remember that, 21st of September, 8 PM Eastern Standard Time. I hope to see you guys there, and I'll see you all in the next video.